So Blake Lively files to dismiss $400 million lawsuit, calling it an abuse of the legal system.
These cars aren't moving.
Ready?
Excuse me. Thanks, Cap.
How you doing, Blake?
In a surprising twist during a high-profile legal proceeding, Blake Lively appeared visibly shaken following sharp remarks from a seasoned lawyer. Witnesses described the moment as a stark contrast to her typically composed and poised demeanor. The courtroom atmosphere grew tense as the lawyer's pointed comments not only questioned Lively's credibility, but also seemed to strike a nerve on deeply personal matters. Observers noted that, despite her usually controlled public image, Lively struggled to contain her frustration as the exchange intensified.
This week, Ryan Reynolds also filed to dismiss the lawsuit, but what does it mean? So this is specifically referring to Justin Baldoni's lawsuit against them. They want the judge to dismiss Baldoni's lawsuit against them, like saying, hey judge, we don't deserve to be sued. Can you please just get him away from us? Her publicist Leslie Sloan and the New York Times have also filed motions to dismiss, but why is this so important right now? Because the judge just settled the protective order dispute, which means the next phase is to move into discovery, which means digging up the text messages, digging up the emails, deposing people, Taylor Swift. And along with a motion to dismiss, we have Leslie Sloan and the New York Times, and presumably next will be Blake and Ryan, are filing a motion to stay discovery, meaning they don't want to move into discovery just yet until the judge decides on all of their motions to dismiss.
Rumors of underlying tensions had been circulating before the session, but few expected such a public display. Since the incident, it has ignited debate among legal experts and fans alike, with some questioning whether the outburst was a strategic move or a genuine lapse in composure. As every detail continues to be dissected, the moment has become a focal point in conversations about the delicate balance between celebrity image and the demands of courtroom decorum.
Ryan Reynolds doesn't think it's fun anymore and he wants out. Hi, my name is Nigel Burns. I'm a trial lawyer in Southern California. That's right, Ryan Reynolds has asked a judge to dismiss him from the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively lawsuit, saying that there are no legal grounds for any claim against him, and basically the claim against him by Baldoni amounts to hurt feelings. Now, many people would say all of this lawsuit or lawsuits is about hurt feelings and not much more, but that's why Ryan is wanting to get out of the party now and saying no more fun and games for him with this.
The proceedings began like any routine case, with both sides carefully presenting their arguments. Blake Lively, advocating for her interests in a matter that had attracted significant public attention, appeared composed and focused at the outset. However, as the session progressed, the opposing lawyer's approach shifted noticeably. While his opening statements were calm and deliberate, his tone carried an undercurrent of sharper criticism that quickly amplified the already tense atmosphere in the courtroom.
And it does raise in my mind the question of, would that be enough to overcome the fair reporting privilege? It might be.
Yeah, and I think when we had talked with Zach Peter several weeks back, the question had come up, and I think Zach was, in tune to this. He says, why was the CRD complaint even filed? And then they go to New York, the Southern District of New York, and file a lawsuit up there. Your comment at the time was what?
It seems like they filed in California because we have a very liberal statute that gives you the litigation privilege. So now Lively's covered under the litigation privilege. And then you go to New York because you can report it under the fair reporting.
According to multiple accounts, his questioning was direct and relentless, deliberately highlighting inconsistencies in Lively's testimony and casting doubt on the truthfulness of her statements. As he continued, his remarks became increasingly sharp, suggesting not only professional missteps, but also hinting at personal failings, comments that many felt strayed beyond the bounds of the legal proceedings.
Their egos are too big.
They're not smart, Stu. If they were smart, they would have settled. They're not smart.
Yeah. And it's $400 million. And Ryan Reynolds has that money from the sale of
Mid-Mo. It's funny because Justin Baldoni sued him for just over what they're worth.
Really? Uh-huh. Oh, that attorney scares the shit out of me, Brian.
Yeah.
Out of me. Oh my God.
And they're like, usually a judge, especially, and attorneys would be like, do not play this out in the press. And Baldoni's attorney is like, we're playing this out in the press. You're going to insinuate about us? We're just going to show the text.
Yeah. No, he's dead right, because you know what? The court of public opinion is really what matters in Hollywood. It just does.
Totally.
It doesn't matter about money, like giving them 50 million, 60 million. It's just reputation. And he was so smart in doing that website, showing all the text. And I'm sorry, like when people say you've done something wrong or like whatever, I've been there. It's like, great, show me the text.
Yeah.
Show me what I did. Show me the screenshots. There's none because it never happened. Exactly. She can't show. He can.
Observers noted that Lively's initial reactions were subtle, a clenched jaw, a brief hesitation before responding. But these quiet signs of tension soon gave way to visible frustration. Her hands, typically resting calmly on the table, began to move emphatically, as if to reinforce the force of her rebuttals. It was at this point that the lawyer, seemingly attuned to every shift in her demeanor, delivered a particularly scathing remark. His comment not only critiqued her legal approach, but also alluded to past controversies. Eyewitnesses described the moment as a clear tipping point, when the cumulative pressure of his remarks visibly rattled her composure.
Maya Schachter. She is a very experienced intimacy coordinator who did not work on It Ends With Us, but she brings a lot of first-hand knowledge and wisdom. And she said something that really got me thinking and resonated. After reading text messages between them that they each included in their respective lawsuits, this intimacy coordinator says, quote, "From reading their text messages, I do sense that at one point there was genuine affection between them and what felt like a friendship. In my experience, when an actor says, I don't need to meet the intimacy coordinator until we're shooting, as much as it hinders my process, it does typically indicate that they trust their scene partner. And those texts made me think that at one point, she did feel a lot of trust with him. And you know what? I actually agree with her."
In the minutes that followed, the courtroom transformed into a stage for a gripping clash of emotion and legal strategy. The lawyer, calm and almost detached in his delivery, spoke with a precision that carried undeniable impact, resonating with everyone in the room. Despite being meticulously prepared and supported by extensive documentation, Lively's defense began to falter under the weight of his pointed, increasingly personal attacks. Court reporters noted that his aim seemed not just to win the case, but to systematically dismantle the celebrity's entire narrative. As the exchange grew more intense, Lively's once composed demeanor began to crack. Her responses, formerly measured and concise, shifted into impassioned rebuttals that reverberated through the tense, silent courtroom.
The delay tactic. It seems like they don't want to move into discovery, probably because discovery is going to get very messy. Again, the text messages, the emails, we're going to get into all the records, we're going to get into the depositions. Taylor Swift, Hugh Jackman, Bradley Cooper. You know for a fact, Brian Friedman is coming for all of them in the depositions. Now, why might Khaleesi and her dragons want to delay the discovery process? One theory is that we have another simple favor. The official premiere is coming out soon, so we may not want to taint that any further, right? Oh, but there's a bigger reason we may want to delay this process. This very, very messy process. Bigger than another simple favor, Ryan Reynolds' company is about to go public. Sounds like a very lucrative deal. Now, we wouldn't want to hurt any chances of a really big sale by having messy details about this messy lawsuit come out.
Those familiar with Lively's public persona noted that her courtroom demeanor marked a stark departure from the polished, carefully composed image she typically presents at media events and interviews. Gone were the rehearsed, measured responses. In their place was a raw, unguarded display of emotion, with visible frustration seeping through. Some legal analysts speculated that the opposing lawyer's strategy was intentionally provocative, designed to elicit a reaction that could later be framed as emotional instability, potentially undermining her credibility. Meanwhile, the public, watching through various media outlets, quickly took to social media to dissect the moment, fueling a narrative that blended legal critique with what many perceived as a deeply personal vendetta.
waiting for Blake Lively to drop this freaking amendment. Okay, am I the only person with their hands raised? Are you guys just here to plagiarize because you know I went through every line like a complete psycho? That's perfectly fine. I just want you guys to know rather that if you're here because you think there's some bombshell in here, as her lawyers were alluding to, oh, wait until everybody sees everything, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because if clickbait was an amendment, this is it. Okay, I cannot believe it. And there's so much more going on here. Now we really see the target of everything, I think, really the linchpin for her lawsuit, the person that she went after. We have to discuss Isabella Ferrer. All that coming up right.
As the session progressed, the intensity of the exchange continued to escalate. The lawyers' questioning increasingly zeroed in on Lively's past career choices and public statements, topics that had, until then, been considered outside the bounds of typical courtroom discourse. His rhetoric subtly suggested that her celebrity status may have impaired her judgment, a claim that struck a chord with both her legal team and her supporters. At one point, the discussion veered into territory widely viewed as irrelevant to the case at hand. The lawyer's relentless probing of every perceived inconsistency was seen by some as a calculated effort to discredit her in ways that extended beyond the norms of standard legal practice.
It was Ryan who had called this shot, that it was very obvious now that we know his brand of narcissism. I feel like we all deserve like PhDs in psychology by the end of this. And since we were able to connect the way his teacher said that he believes he can act his way out of anything and make people fall in love with him, I said yesterday on the show, 100% Ryan was the one who put this line in here. Not SNL, not Tina Fey, not Blake Lively, but Ryan. And sure enough, some amazing mommy sleuth sends me a link yesterday, which you guys don't forget. She says, check out this broadcast on an Australian radio show called Fifi, Fev, and Nick for Breakfast, literally a Melbourne, Australia station, where they had a guy who's been with SNL for like 25 years. His name is Cue Card Wally. He literally holds the cue cards for SNL. And he was just opening up with them in a friendly conversation about how exciting hosting that 50th anniversary was. And at the very end of the conversation, Cue Card Wally gets asked about that line. Ryan Reynolds jumping up and making a joke about the Justin Baldoni situation. And take a listen to what Cue Card Wally had to say.
Now, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively have been in the news a lot, and Ryan Reynolds, we want to know, was that an improv or was it scripted, his little piece he did?
That was actually, he had a different line in rehearsal, and he pitched that to replace it. So that was his idea to do it.
It was Ryan's idea.
In response, Lively's retorts became noticeably sharper. She pushed back against the line of questioning, arguing that it was not only irrelevant, but amounted to a direct attack on her character, an intentional distraction from the core legal issues. Her replies were laced with legal citations and references to documented evidence, a clear attempt to regain control of the narrative and reassert her credibility. Yet as the minutes passed, her rising frustration became evident. Her tone, once calm and measured, grew increasingly tense, and her previously composed body language began to show signs of strain. Eyewitnesses observed her eyes flashing with intensity and her gestures turning more forceful, revealing the emotional weight of the unrelenting scrutiny.
Now we have these insanely wealthy humans that are just having a pillow fight, and we already have a backlog in the court system. And now they have clogged up 3 different areas of law and people that actually have to go to work for a living. And there's other cases that are behind them that are legitimate. And this is just silliness. This is high-powered, high-priced lawyer doing legal gymnastics. At the end of it, there's going to be nothing. Nothing's going to happen. There's not even, it's going to be dismissed everywhere. And that's it. And I enjoy talking about it because I like the legal gymnastics that the lawyers have done, but it's all nonsense. All of it. And you can get mad at me for saying that because this guy said this or this girl said this. When it all comes to a head at the end, everybody knew what they were doing, and everybody is trying to make themselves look good, and they want to make more money because they're, entitled Hollywood people. Well, that's my.
Courtroom aides later described the episode as highly uncharacteristic for the celebrity, whose public appearances are typically defined by grace under pressure. The lawyer's strategy had clearly succeeded in provoking a reaction, one that many saw as a notable break from traditional courtroom decorum. In the aftermath, legal experts weighed in, noting that while such emotional displays are rare, they can carry significant consequences in high-stakes cases involving public figures. They emphasize that celebrity trials often operate at the intersection of legal tactics and public perception, where every gesture and word is magnified under the lens of intense scrutiny.
Joe Rogan is blasting Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, and I just kind of found this to be quite funny. I found it funny. He said that they effed up when he was on his podcast because it came up about the whole It Ends With Us drama and the legal saga. And I feel like more and more people are starting to come to the point where they're realizing Blake Lively very clearly is not telling the truth. I think when I was talking it through yesterday with Daniel Feruzin, it kind of became abundantly clear because I was like, what smoking gun could she possibly have? She's trying to argue 47.1, and sure, that's a strong argument, but again, it goes down to, a matter of fact that will have to be determined by the jury, not a judge. The very same sentiment that was echoed by Harvey Levin when he was on TMZ, and he's like, these are matters of, these are questions of fact, and questions of fact are for the jury, not for the coconut tree, not for the judge.
As the session drew to a close, the lawyer delivered one final, cutting remark that seemed to solidify the narrative for the day. In his summation, he revisited the points that had unsettled Lively, framing her outburst as a sign of deeper, underlying issues. His closing words carried an air of finality, leaving no doubt that he intended to depict her not merely as a celebrity defendant, but as someone whose personal and professional life was tangled in a web of contradictions. The judge, maintaining order, called for focus on the legal merits of the case rather than personal emotions. However, the damage had already been done. The incident was recorded, analyzed, and shared widely within both legal circles and the public sphere. In the aftermath, media analysts and legal commentators have been busy dissecting the event. They note that while the lawyer's remarks were within the scope of legal strategy, Lively's reaction underscored the unique challenges celebrities face when their public and private lives collide in the courtroom. The episode has sparked debate about the boundaries of courtroom interrogation tactics and the potential consequences of personal attacks on witnesses. Some argue that while such tactics may be legally permissible, they can ultimately compromise the integrity of the judicial process by shifting the focus from facts to emotions.
Ryan Reynolds at a Marvel panel, I guess he mentioned something about, because, there's all the drama about they had their daughter Inez, who was 7 years old, and they had her say this line in the Deadpool skit where they had Nice Pool when Deadpool was in that alternate universe or whatever, a resurfaced interview with Ryan Reynolds, that little girl was Ryan and Blake's daughter Inez, who was 7 at the time, and she references Wolverine's eggplant in Deadpool's mouth. So, and she literally says that when you get Wolverine's eggplant out of, she doesn't say eggplant, she uses the real word. And she says that, and they joke about how they had to retake that line over and over and over, and how they had to, repeatedly take many cuts. And Inez at first was uncomfortable and didn't want to say it. And then Ryan Reynolds was like, well, if you don't say it, then I'll have to give the part to somebody else. And then she was like, no, I'll do it. So there you go. It's just hilarious to make your daughter repeat a fellatio joke time and time again.
Behind the scenes, members of Lively's legal team have indicated that the incident is being carefully reviewed, with plans to address any perceived biases or tactics that may have impacted the proceedings. They argue that the outburst was an isolated response to an aggressive line of questioning, one that doesn't reflect her usual conduct. On the other hand, the lawyer's team defends their approach as a necessary and effective means to uncover weaknesses in the opposing testimony. This divergence of perspectives highlights a broader debate about the role of personality in legal disputes, especially when high-profile figures are involved. Throughout the day, social media platforms were abuzz with opinions and debates. Fans expressed mixed feelings, some sympathizing with Lively for being pushed too far, while others saw her reaction as a moment of vulnerability that could be exploited by her opponents. Legal forums were equally active, with seasoned attorneys discussing the ethical boundaries of courtroom conduct. The incident has since become a case study in legal circles, illustrating the fine line between effective cross-examination and personal disparagement. In many ways, this episode is likely to serve as a reference point in future celebrity litigation, where every word and gesture is under the intense scrutiny of the public eye.
Lively talking about the boob cake and all these things, like all the things that we've seen resurface in their interviews are ridiculous when you put them in the context of what they're trying to accuse Justin Baldoni of doing, especially now knowing that they've taken the things that they've accused him of doing and they've manipulated the context. Remember, again, the text message, the cherry-picked text messages, the removing of the emoji.
As the court session came to a close, the lingering tension in the room was undeniable. The judge's final remarks served as a reminder of the sanctity of the legal process, urging all parties to proceed with respect for the institution. However, for many, the real story of the day wasn't the verdict or the legal arguments, but the unexpected outpouring of raw emotion from one of Hollywood's most admired figures. The incident has sparked wider conversations about the pressures of public life and the high stakes involved when personal narratives collide with legal battles. In the days to follow, as the media continues to scrutinize every detail, the lasting impact of this courtroom drama on both legal practice and celebrity culture remains uncertain.